mode.
Good morning or good afternoon or whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome everybody to today's webinar on using TSheets to streamline payroll and invoicing. My name is MB Raimondi. Let me just get to the right slide here. And I may have met a few of you before or seen you in webinars. I am an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro advisor, both in desktop and online, and certified in anything Intuit will let me certify in. And I've been teaching webinars and live presentations for over 15 years, and I'm always honored when Intuit asks me to present for them. So you can see there, I am from Trumbull, Connecticut, but I'm actually in Arizona. So with my daughter who had some minor surgery last week, and I am very happy to be here with you today. So this webinar does qualify for a continuing education, and in order to get this 1 hour of CPE that it qualifies for, I will provide a CPE keyword during the webinar. You want to write it down because towards the end of the webinar I will be asking you to fill in a poll and fill in that CPE keyword. And you know, it's funny, you get to that poll and all the words look so similar. You know, you're like, oh, was it that one or that one? So write it down on that, and then you will fill in the poll question. Then what happens is certificates are emailed to you at the same email address that you used to register for the training within about 14 business days. So give Intuit some time. It takes them a while to get this all processed. And of course, you have to keep a copy for your records. I don't know if you've heard yet about QuickBooks Connect 2015, but that is an event that is coming up in November, so November 2nd to 4th in San Jose. I was very fortunate to attend QuickBooks Connect 2014, and I will tell you it was an awesome event. And if you go to QuickBooksConnect.com, you can get information on it. It doesn't mean you're signing up, but it just means that you'll get information. So it was, last year was the first one, and I was excited that Intuit was doing it again. It was their first time of bringing together not only us as consultants and pro advisors, but small businesses themselves, developers, and then of course lots of Intuit folk there and some really great motivational speakers, and also really good food. So the networking is awesome, the food was awesome, and the tracks, the educational tracks were really pretty cool. So you might want to sign up for that. We've got a pretty hefty agenda today for our next hour that we're chatting together. We're going to just generally talk about why you would want to use apps, and then why track time, and then go over tracking time, and we're using TSheets to track our time. And the reason we're using TSheets is because we have a Pro Advisor exclusive that you'll find out at the end of this webinar. So we'll talk about who's a good fit, because you know, any app, and just like when we're trying to decide a QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop, it's not always the best fit for everybody, but let's, you know, we'll see who it might be a good fit for. So let's move right in and talk about why should we be using apps. Well, one of the reasons is because they are just becoming very popular, right? What we're finding is people are getting more and more in tune with the cloud, that they want to find some resource that will allow them to enter information one time rather than multiple times, and to kind of post wherever it needs to post. So, you know, lack of integration between apps really does cause a lot of pain. And I can't tell you how many times when I'm meeting with a new client and I kind of go over my needs assessment, and I'll say, okay, so what are you doing now? Well, we were doing this in QuickBooks or whatever accounting program they're using, and then we pulled some information from there and put it into Excel, and then we pull information from somewhere else and put it into Excel. But you know, now we're always having to double check because you know, it's easy to make a typo, right? So the more times you touch something, the more room for error that you have there. So that's one of the reasons. Now apps are cloud-based, so it's nice to be able to access that information anytime, anywhere on there, so that you know, you can get it from wherever that you have, you know, wherever. And you see, just looking at the picture of the apps on the PowerPoint slide that there are all sorts of different things that will integrate with your QuickBooks, your QuickBooks users there. And the thing is that the pain is really getting worse here. So what we're finding is that because the pain is getting worse, the small business adoption of apps is increasing every year because they have an easier access to try and use more apps. And one of the cool things at apps.com, which is the Intuit App Center, that there's free trials for all of them. And so they can give it a try and figure out whether it's appropriate for them and figure out what solutions are appropriate to them. And we'll see apps.com. Now, we're mainly talking about QuickBooks Online today, though a lot of apps will integrate with QuickBooks Desktop, like TSheets integrates both with online and desktop. Zencash, which is a kind of, it's like your person who has to make those hated phone calls saying, hey, you owe me money, or send out those emails on collections. That Zencash does that. MavenLink is project tracking. Avalara is sales tax. Transaction Pro importer, and they have an exporter too, and a deleter. They have a bunch of different apps there. But that allows you to take Excel information. So you may have some kind of third-party solution that doesn't integrate with QuickBooks, but will export into a CSV file or into Excel, where you can use Transaction Pro Importer to map those transactions and actually import them into QBO, again, without having to retype. So lots of things, SOS inventory to expand the inventory tracking method for CRM or field service management, and then Bill.com, which is really your payables management and somewhat of a receivables management. And then Intuit itself has payroll and payments that will integrate with QuickBooks Online as well as QuickBooks Desktop. So when you're talking about the small business life cycle, it's kind of, okay, what do you do and what apps might help me with that? And so this, again, just an example on here. You need a CRM program, so you want something to track your leads. So Method might be a good solution for that. MavenLink to manage those projects. If you're tracking inventory, maybe SOS. Tracking time, use TSheets. Paying bills, use Bill.com. Getting paid, use Zencash. And again, it's nice to have all of that to try and automate the process, ease the pain, make everybody more productive and more efficient. So the Intuit App Center is at apps.com, and you'll see, I mean, it's probably, if you go on it today, there might be some different apps up there. There are more and more being added all the time, and I would encourage you just to put it on your list of favorites and look out there. One of the things I really like is that folks like ourselves, as well as our clients, can go out and post reviews and rate it. There are some articles out there that kind of expand the usage or let you know how you can expand the usage and give you some practical ways to go ahead and apply it so that you can help figure out whether it's an appropriate solution for your client. You can easily add an app to your QBO subscription by logging into QBO and going to the left-hand nav bar and down and click on apps, and you'll see that because we're going to do that. I'm actually going to spend a bit of time in QBO. So, and then in TSheets, so you can see how all that works together. So that's just kind of general on why use apps, make us more efficient, cut down the errors, and really just be more productive in our businesses and be able to spend our time going out and making money and doing the things that we need to be doing. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about why might we want to track time. Now, I am an accountant, right? So I'm a CPA, and I have been taught to track my time from my first job in public accounting because they always billed by the hour. Now, we don't necessarily bill by the hour these days because of value billing and being more efficient. Does that mean we're worth any less because it would take our client longer, just whatever on there. But I still think it's a good idea to track time from our point of view, even if we're doing value billing, to know whether we're value billing correctly. Are we really making money on these jobs or not? But when we're just talking in the general world, including our world, time theft averages out to at least 10 minutes per employee per day. So when you think about that and you multiply it out, you could be losing a lot of time there. And it takes an estimate of 5 or 6 minutes, and these are all the, it's footnoted there where this information came from. The people who have done studies have found out that it takes an estimated 5 or 6 minutes to add an audit one-time card for one employee. So if you have an employer that has, 30 employees at, 5 minutes or 6 minutes that you're auditing the time card, that really adds up there. And manual time card computation errors can cost 1 to 8% of your annual gross payroll. And then there's been a rise in wage and labor disputes. So if you're tracking time and you're having your employees sign off on their timesheets that this is the time that we work, I don't know that they have a good case, right? We've got documentation to show exactly when they worked and what they did in case any kind of labor dispute comes up. I mean, time is definitely one of our most valuable resources. Our employees are, and time is. It's an expensive resource to waste. So, as you're going through, if you correlate what we said on the last slide, that it takes 5 to 6 minutes to audit a payroll or audit a time card, that means that payroll's probably taken a while to do. You're at a risk for being audited. We want better job costing. So why stop? Why don't we just automate everything and just make it easier? Because if we do time tracking, we're really going to improve our efficiency. It also improves our productivity. So we have data for future project costing. We can do accurate estimates, hopefully accurate delivery dates, easy re-estimation of open tasks there. We can process payroll. We can process invoicing. We can get help when we need it. We can make changes, and it can help us when we're doing our reviews of our employees, and that we have documentation to back up if we have to discipline an employee for different things on there. So it makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about TSheets. Now we're talking about TSheets today because as Pro Advisors, we have an offer from TSheets where we can get a TSheets account, and we'll talk a little bit more of that at the end of the webinar. And if you read the LinkedIn groups or you belong to National Advisor Network or the Sleater Group, you do see TSheets as talked about a lot. And I know I use TSheets personally. I love it. And they love employees. So just a little bit, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, is that it's a web-based employee time tracking. This is their TSheets group, and if they couldn't make the picture, then they put pictures on a stick of them. I mean, that's it. Those are, if you call in, those are one of the people that you're actually going to talk to. And it was founded in 2006 by Matt Russell, and kind of for the same reason that sorry, man, I'm not thinking here this morning. Kind of for the same reason that we saw before of why track time. So he found that people were losing their productivity. He owned a different business and realized that, there's a problem here. And so he went to a developer friend of his and said, hey, can we do something? Because I think we're losing time. People are inadvertently, they're rounding up on how long they worked, and I think we need to be more accurate. And so they came up with TSheets, which is pretty cool. So who is a good fit for TSheets? And this is kind of who is a good fit for really any kind of time tracking, but again, we're talking about TSheets. So the top industries that are using TSheets are accounting and tax services, so folks like ourselves, contractors, particularly because they're sending people out in the field, so that really makes sense to track time because there's a mobile app on there. Anybody who has multiple locations, because then you have complete visibility, and then the beauty of it is their seamless integration into accounting software. Now landscaping, I just was on the phone with TSheets on, what day is today? Today's Monday. On Friday, setting up TSheets for a commercial landscaper client of mine, again, and I'll talk why I thought that this was a really good fit for them when we go in and actually look at the TSheets in the mobile app there. So other possibilities would be like home health care, any kind of trades, plumber, electrician, caterers. It is DCAA compliant, so it might make sense there. Any technology or IT people. So TSheets does have an open API that's like the back door of the programming code. So they can program, if you have an IT person, they can program it if it needs features that aren't in TSheets. Property management, like maintenance people can track their time on what they're working on or who's showing houses or apartments, any kind of advertising, design, marketing, sales. I mean, really, it's kind of anybody that you want to track time is probably a good fit for that. When you're trying to determine whether time tracking is appropriate for your clients, you want to look at things like or listen to them to say, oh, my payroll is taking too long, or my employees never turn their time cards in on time. In fact, the same landscaper, because we're just starting TSheets today, had sent out an email that I was CC'd on trying to get the payroll timesheets from the crew leaders, and she uploaded a picture of the Wicked Witch of the West and, giving them a hard time saying, I don't want to have to come after you on my broomstick on there. So, that's a real pain, is getting people to turn their time cards in on time and legible. I have a plumber client that, they write their timesheets out on the back of each other's backs, right? And so half the time the bookkeeper couldn't even read what it is in there. So these are kind of the conversations that you want to listen for. And questions that you might want to ask, do you have hourly employees so you can track time for salary people, or I'm the owner of my company, I don't take a paycheck, but I still track my time. Definitely, if you're using QuickBooks Payroll, it's great because it integrates, and then you've got all the hours in there ready to go on the paycheck on there. Are they manually tracking or entering employee time? So this landscaper client that I have was, they were having manual timesheets. The bookkeeper was then taking it and putting it into this very complex Excel spreadsheet, which then was going into QuickBooks on the paycheck itself. So, way too much work, way too much work. Let's just cut out all that middle stuff and let it go directly upon approval into QuickBooks so that you can create the paychecks. Other questions, mobile employees or multiple locations. Do you want to confirm the employee's work location via GPS? So that's really a cool thing about an automatic time tracker. Not all of them, but TSheets does for sure, is that if you're using a mobile device, it's actually going to track where that person is, and it checks it every couple minutes there. And then do you really want to know if when somebody is working real time, we can go ahead and look at that? It's just kind of general questions and probably not any that are surprises to you. Now, if you're trying to figure out whether it's appropriate for your client and your client is saying, well, but I have to pay, so much per month per employee, it seems like it might be a lot of money. Well, you can actually calculate the payback. You can go out to tsheets.com/payback and put in the number of employees and then, what the average hourly rate is, just to give you an idea of how much savings it is to do time tracking and, to automate it and have it integrate with your accounting software. So, and the whole calculator is based on the American Payroll Association's statistics. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. And then just a couple other notes about, if I can get on the right sheet here, about TSheets is that it's more than a stopwatch. Oh, another thing that I like about it is if the internet is down, right, it's a cloud-based solution, and you can still track your time, and then when the internet comes back up, it will sync that time back up there. So it's, that's a pretty big deal there. If there is a satellite, so the GPS kind of works a little bit independent from the internet tracking, so it still might track the GPS part even though they're offline on the internet as far as the time going up there. It checks the GPS every 10 minutes. If you're tracking on the web, it goes by the IP address. So you saw on the second slide that I live in Trumbull, Connecticut, but my cable company is in Newtown, Connecticut, and so it always says that I'm working in Newtown on there. And it's pretty simple to use, which you're going to see next. And I think one of the big things for anybody who works with government contractors is that because of the audit log, I'm not sure that's what they call it, but similar to what we think about the audit log, it is DCAA compliant, which is good. And this timestamp log has all the actions in the account. So I'm going to give you your only CPE keyword. This is just in our webinar. So our CPE keyword for today is dragon. That is a beautiful, beautiful dragon getting ready to jump off the rocks there. So you want to write down the word dragon, because once we go off this slide, we are not allowed to go back to it, nor are we allowed to answer if you ask us in the Q&A section. But dragon is the first CPE key, is the only, is the solo CPE keyword for this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. So please write down the word dragon, dragon going once, dragon going twice, dragon, we are moving on here. So the next thing we want to do is we want to actually talk about using TSheets. So how does it work? I mean, how do we sign up for it? How do we set it up? How do we enter time? How do we manage time? How do we approve time? And how do we export it back into QBO? So it's pretty simple. When you are in QBO, you can, or at apps.com, you sign up for TSheets. You can go ahead and click on Learn More and get the app now, and it will ask you to sign into your Intuit account. Pretty simple. And then when you do that, it will ask you if you are, and this is, most of the apps are like this. Well, this screen not necessarily, because not all apps integrate with desktop, but TSheets happens too. So it asks you if you are signing up for Windows, or for QuickBooks Desktop, or for QBO, QuickBooks Online, and then it will give you the company names listed for QBO, and you choose which one to actually connect TSheets to. My mouse is having a hard time today, or maybe it's me, I don't know. So then what happens when you connect it, there is a guided setup wizard that will take you through all the options. You can actually have TSheets do it with you, and you might want to, at least initially, if you're not familiar with it. I know when I sat in with Elise on Friday with this landscaping client, I learned a lot. It was really pretty cool on there. And so, you learn more and more. It's kind of like QuickBooks. It's an accounting program, but everybody uses it in a different way. So the more experience you have, the better you are at it. You can walk through things like overtime settings, payroll period, if you have special state things, what do you want to show on the timesheet. So if you're doing job costing, which is one of the great reasons that you want to track time, then you would want the service items to show on the timesheets. If you're doing class tracking, you might want class to show on the timesheets. If you have vendors that you're tracking time for, you can import your vendors. So that way you can track time for them, and then again, we've got the time that we can invoice our customers for. And then you would be ready for your first import. So I'm going to go through these settings in TSheets itself, but there are company settings that you want to go through. And again, you'll see it more when we actually flip over into QBO and TSheets of what you want to allow employees to do. Do you want to create groups and managers or manage PTO codes? And again, I'll talk more about this in a moment. And then that's kind of it on the setup, right? So when you go through, it's just like setting up QuickBooks, right? You get all your names and lists there, which most of that actually comes from the from QuickBooks itself. And then you've got the preferences that you have to look at and check and make sure everything is okay. So once we set up the time, then we need to enter the time. And there are two different ways that you can enter time when you're logging into the web. So there's a manual time card, and then there's a time card that is active time card where I clock in and I clock out and I say what I'm working on. You also have the ability to go mobile. So you can enter your time on either an i or an Android. If you have an older phone, then there's optimized web pages, or you have Windows Mobile or a BlackBerry. If you don't have a smartphone, you can text in, or you can dial in, or you can tweet in. It sends direct messages that are coded. You can text. I mean, it's really pretty cool, right? So enter time a lot of different ways on there. So trying to, I think TSheets did a good job at trying to address all of the different kinds of people that might want to track time. I know when we had a caregiver using an agency for my dad when he was ill, and we had to have 24-hour care for him. So as the home health aides came in, they were required to call from the landline because the agency wanted to make sure that they were where they were supposed to be. Well, the problem now is that a lot of people don't have landlines, right? And so what do? And that's when I guess it's nice to have that GPS tracking. If they've got a smartphone, then do the GPS tracking. And if they don't have a smartphone, there's just different ways that they can go ahead and sign in. The GPS tracking is really pretty cool. So you would turn that on, and it checks it every 10 minutes, and it shows up on the map, and you can click on any of these dots to get any specifics on there, what device, where they are, what the accuracy radius is. And when your client's employees are on the app, everybody sees their own information there. When you're looking on the web, the managers see the full detail for whoever they are managing on there. So pretty cool on there. So that's entering time and then tracking the GPS. Our next thing that we need to do is we need to manage the time. So who's working? We want to manage the timesheets. If there's permissions are set up, certain people can edit the timesheets, but if they edit it, that's going to show up on the audit log. And on the right-hand side, you can actually see who's working, right? If you're on the web and you have permission to see that information. If you have to make any changes, you're going to go ahead and make those changes, and then when everything looks okay, you will go ahead and approve that time, and you can actually click on View Details if you have to go back and look at it. And then once you approve the time, you will end up exporting that time into QuickBooks Online. So that's like kind of it in a nutshell, but I think the best thing that it's going to make more impact to you is to actually go in and see how this works, and let me explain some of the stuff that we have not looked at before. So I'm switching on into the web now. So I'm on a web page, and actually I'm on the TSheets web page because one of the things that I wanted to show you, and you can find information on this under the mobile drop down, under track time and then mobile, I think that's where it is that you can do a time card for crews. So again, this came up on Friday because they didn't want all the workers to track their own time. They wanted the crew leader to do that. So the crew leader will log everybody in as they come in and what they're doing, and then log them back out or switch jobs, when they're ready to do that for the whole crew. So that's, I think, is really pretty cool. Okay, so let's go into QuickBooks. So I am in just a sample demo file that we use. and I am signed up for TSheets. So if I go to apps on my left-hand nav bar, I will see, hopefully, I will see the apps, see how good my internet is here. So this gives us all apps, and I'm going to click on my apps to get whatever apps that I have. Man, I have a lot of apps on this one. And launch TSheets. So when I do that, it actually will open up my TSheets web-based page. And I want to show you a little bit more on the setup, and then tracking time, and then exporting the time. So I'm going to start with the company settings. So my profile is just your basic kind of profile. When I look at my company settings, my general is just kind of account information, but the advanced is pretty cool here. And we kind of saw a screenshot, so when we go through the TSheets Setup wizard, it will help us fill these out, but we can always get back to these settings by clicking on the company settings on TSheets left-hand nav bar. So allow employees to manage their own timesheets. Do we want them to be able to put notes on the time card? I thought this was kind of an interesting one, high hours worked from the employees. So it says it's useful if you're using TSheets as a simple in and out board, or your employees are salaried and don't really need to see the hours on there. Can they adjust their time? So can they adjust their clock out time? And then if you are allowing that, then you probably want the administrator to get an email if somebody has actually adjusted their time. When I click on add-ons, I can add on the approval. So if you need somebody to approve the time, which I think is really a good idea. I mean, even when I was only tracking my own time before I had employees or subs tracking time, I still had approvals turned on, custom fields, which I'll show you in just a moment. And then there's some other, like if you have to have somebody dial in, you have that there. We wouldn't create invoices in TSheets because we're using QBO. So we want overtime alerts. So you're going to want to go through these add-ons, and if you don't understand them, make sure that you talk to TSheets there. So those are the main company settings that I wanted to show you. The next thing that I want to do is come over here under add-ons, which the manage add-ons is the same as one of those tabs in the company settings, but I want to look at custom fields. So what are the things that are important? Remember, we're saying that we're trying to be more efficient by doing time tracking. So the things that we're going to want to do is if we want to mark things billable or not billable, we can go ahead and make sure we set that up there. And there's actually, you can add custom, so right now it's yes or no. And then you can say whether it's required or not, whether they have to fill in that field or not. If you're doing class tracking, you might want to go ahead and say that you want to track classes. And one of the neat things is when I'm in here, as well as some of my other lists, is that these classes came over from that QBO file. If this is something that never is going to be used by my time tracker, so either a class or a service item, which we'll look at next, I can actually exit out, meaning they will not have the choice to choose it. So it's not deleting it from QuickBooks. It's just deleting it as an option in TSheets. So, maybe you have an overhead class, but you don't want them ever to post anything to overhead or other or something like that. So you would exit out here. And the same thing with my service items. So these are service items that came over from QBO, like finance charge. Maybe I don't need that. I get to say, I'm going to exit out. The item will not be archived in QuickBooks. If it's changed in QuickBooks, it will reappear here after the next QuickBooks import. If you really want to change something, permanently, you're going to go back into QBO to do that. So I'm going to say, yes, archive the item here, but not in QuickBooks, because I wouldn't be tracking time for finance charges, right? Doesn't make sense. So I probably would be getting rid of a lot of these. And anything that ended up, if you did it by mistake, you can easily get that information back in. But again, it's nice to be able to figure out, what you really want something, our time trackers to see. And again, it doesn't delete it in QuickBooks, it just deletes it as a choice for them. If I click on my customers, I have kind of that same thing here. If we have customers that we don't track time for, we can go ahead and delete them, if applicable. Now, the other cool thing that I can do is I may not want all of my employees to see all of my customers. I may want them just to see the customers that they work on. So right now we have here that you can assign this customer to everybody, but if I take my check mark off of assign to everybody and I click on assign, it will say, okay, so this person, we can have Deborah Wood, should be on Deborah Wood's list, and Victoria Kelly's, and Aileen Bayek's, and then I save it, and it's just assigned to a certain amount of people here. Now, these customers, again, are coming over from QuickBooks. What I need to tell you is that anytime you add a customer, you need to add it in QuickBooks and then make sure that you import that information. Same thing really for employees, but I will give you just a reason why you might add an employee here. But these employees are coming over from QBO or desktop, depending on which one you're using. And when I edit, I've got the employee editor, so it says, the first name, last name, it's imported from QuickBooks. The email address is imported from QuickBooks. Their QuickBooks ID, there must be something behind the scenes there. But this would be their TSheets username and password. We could track hire date. But this is where those groups come in. So what I did is I set up a crew, crew number 1. And when you edit this, there's not much to see. What do I want to call it? I want to call it crew number 1. And when I look at my people here, it says who is the manager. So I can add a manager for this crew. So they're the ones that will be able to review the time and make sure everything is okay on there. And then I am actually adding this person, Aileen Bayek, to crew number 1. So I can set all of that up. So it can go through. Now when we look on permissions, so we have our global permissions, but we also have employee permissions. So do we want Aileen to have be able to do mobile time entry? Do we want her to be able to see who's working, manage timesheets? Most of these, only the administrator is going to be the person there. And you can change the user type to be the administrator, a payroll manager, or a custom user, or are they an employee? So we would take a look at these and save that. And then what projects are assigned to them. So we did assign Bayshore Chamber of Commerce, and notice that we've got that little checkbox over here because we only said not to assign to everybody for that, just Bayshore Chamber of Commerce. So again, I can review to make sure that she has access to the correct jobs that she's working on. Here's our PTO codes. Here's our overtime. And again, we can set custom rules for particular employees or just do our general setting, which you would have set up in the when you go through the setup wizard. Now, generally, again, you don't add employees here because when you're talking about your list information, you go from QBO or QB Desktop into TSheets. You don't go from TSheets back there. What goes back into QuickBooks is the time, right? So when we add to QuickBooks first. Now, I happen to come up against a situation where we decided that, yes, we were going to add an employee in TSheets. And you're like, well, why would you possibly do that? Well, this was a bookkeeper for multiple businesses, and the business that we were setting up, she was not an employee of that business, but she had to be the administrator. I mean, she didn't really have anything to do with it. She wasn't set up on the vendor list. and she wasn't set up on the employee list because she got paid out of a different company. But she had to manage, I mean, she was the administrator for TSheets for this particular company. So we added her as an employee. That won't sync with QuickBooks, doesn't make any difference because we're not syncing with the file that's paying her, we're syncing with this file that she's managing the time of the workers there. So that would be one instance where you might want to add an employee that doesn't sync back with QuickBooks. So we kind of looked at our lists, and so our company settings, our custom fields, our customer list, our employee list. The last thing I want to show you over here before we actually enter time is our QuickBooks dropdown. So whether you're using QBO or using desktop, here's your import, and your import is going to be, you know what, actually it's probably going to start doing it, but we had set up in our company settings what we wanted to import, so customers, employees, service items, vendors possibly. But if you don't, if you don't have any vendors you're tracking time for, you probably wouldn't have vendors. So once your sync is completed, you can actually view the log, and it updated Victoria Kelly. Nothing else was, it did some customer import. So we were trying to figure out what best practices are on the importing, and maybe it's, once a day you want to do that import so that you don't forget, and then somebody goes to track their time and the customer is not listed or something like that. Now, when we look at our QuickBooks preferences here, here's where we have the that's QuickBooks integration. So what do we want the employee timesheets to show? Customers, service items, billable, yes or no, and then is it a choice or is it mandatory, or class on there, and then just this exporting time. You don't want to export timesheets prior to this date on there. And then your other options on here to import vendors as employees, or send me an email when employee or vendor details change. There's a great QuickBooks integration guide, or you can contact support. They have been very responsive when I've sent them information on there. Now, I will tell you, and I'm not sure, 100% sure how it works in on payroll items with QBO here. But what I will tell you, that if you're working with desktop, there is a payroll item mapping tool. So there is not that mapping tool in QBO because of I think because of the backdoor of the programming code, what they open up related to payroll. So in desktop, you can actually map a payroll item to a service item, so when you go to create the paycheck, it's correct. So a lot of small businesses, it doesn't make any difference. It's whatever, an employee is an hourly employee, they have one payroll item that's hourly opposed to, direct wages or whatever. But you may have a case where you have the same employee may have to have 2 payroll items or 3 payroll items besides your paid time off, sick and vacation kinds of things, that have to map to different accounts on the chart of accounts, so we have different payroll items set up. In that case, with desktop, again, not with QBO, you can actually map a service item so that if a certain service item is used, direct hourly or indirect hourly, it will know which payroll item to use when it creates the paycheck or when it imports the timesheet on there. You could also, instead of mapping it to service items or employees, which is kind of the typical, you could map it, use class tracking to map to payroll items. It's a little bit confusing, and maybe I'm giving you too much information, but I just wanted you to be aware, at least with QuickBooks Desktop, that there is a little bit of flexibility as far as how you're going to set up the payroll items. Now, when we're talking about QBO, then we're really that payroll item mapping tool is not available. So it's really whatever payroll item is set up in the employee's record. Okay, so that was kind of the setup. So the next thing is tracking time. So certainly the easiest way to track time, again, probably the easiest way is to do it on your mobile device because that's really cool. But remember we had that one screenshot where it said, well, we can put in my time card and we can, log in. I'm going to log in for somebody else on there. And then it would track it live, right, on there. And so you would log in, you would say what you did, depending on whether you have billable, not billable, class tracking turned on, and your service items, you would mark which customer you're working on and fill in the rest of that information. Because I want to put in time for somebody else, not for this QBOA realm test at gmail.com, I can come here and put in a manual time card. So even initially, if people are resistant to change, you can say, okay, well, keep your manual timesheet and we'll just put it manually into TSheets and make sure everything is okay. Now, I don't really recommend that, but it could be done. So I am going to enter time just so you can see. So let me first go, I'm going to go to the previous week and then switch times. So for Victoria Kelly, and then I come in here and put, okay, who did she work on? She worked on the Freeman Supply Company, project number 15, and how many hours? So she worked 8 hours this day, and now I have on the bottom, billable is optional, but I'm going to say, yes, this is billable for Freeman Supply, and this was for classes, and it was accounting consulting, that was my service item, and then we can put in notes, and notes are going to appear on the timesheet, which means it might also, can end up on the invoice. So this can show on invoice. So that was that day, and I'm going to click on Save. And then the other customer that she worked on, she did some internal work, some marketing. She spent all day here on that. So on that one, I'm going to say, nope, that was not billable. And it was marketing for books. And I'm just making this up, so. And then whatever notes that I want there, but this was not billable. And I click on Save. So, basically what happens is you just manually enter the time using decimal points, and then you can see what the totals are. So let's say we have everybody's time in there. So we enter it either, if it's mobile, it's just syncing up all the time once they're connected to the internet. They can use their time card, which is web-based, or they can enter manually on there. So the next thing that we're going to do is go through the approvals. So when I look at my approvals report, let's go ahead and look. I forgot what, I think it was 5.4 to 5.10 that we were looking at. And we'll just look for Victoria. I mean, generally, you'd probably look for everybody. So how do you want to show hours? And then I run the report. So somebody's going to look at this, and if they need to see the details, they go ahead and they just click on View Details. Oh, there is no hours. So what did I do wrong? Oh, my goodness. Was it this week that I entered time for? Or did I not save it? I have no idea what time period I ran time for. Ah, how can I show that? So let's go back to our manual time card. Switch user. And just love it when, you think you're doing everything okay, and I probably put it in for him. Oh yeah, see, I didn't take that last step and click on switch user. So let's go to our Freeman Supply Company again. Oops. And left click. Some project 15. and 8 hours. And we want to mark it billable. I don't know how we have class tracking set up, but we're going to do that, and we're going to do accounting consulting, and then this will show up on invoice and save, and then we'll do it again. So this is good practice, isn't it? And this one is internal. Do the same thing that the other guy did. Marketing, 8 hours there, and you can have, you can have multiple time per day. Just, guess we'll keep it on classes and save that. Okay, so let's go back to our approvals report. Well, look at that. We've got 16 hours. So again, I can look at the details. Otherwise, I can come here and click on approve. Today is May 11th. Oh, I know it doesn't make sense on there. And then the last step that I have is I'm going to export all approved time. Wow. We got a lot of time here. I'm going to export all the hours. And it says, hey, MB, you've got a log here. What did you do? So this one was the skipped one. Let's just go back into QBO and see what we can find. So I'm going to go to customers, and let's just see if it came in, because sometimes it doesn't work. And I'm going to go to unbilled activity, and let's go to Freeman Project 15 and see if we have any unbilled activity. See if I did it right or not. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Scroll down. So Freeman, for some reason, we have one unbilled activity. I don't know what I did. I think you get the idea, though, right? Oh, that's Project 9, Project 15. I'm going to go back to my customers and start the invoice and see what the heck we have here. So that was reimbursable cost. So I want to say that I did mess something up, and it really is easy to use. So I'm not sure what happened there. But the time, when I've shown it other times, and when I do it myself, comes on over, and what you would do is you would see it in the little drawer, just like any other unreimbursed costs and that. Let's just see if we scroll down here if we find anybody with unbilled time. No, we've got unbilled activities. Let's just see what happens here. Right, so we have, here's all these services that we have information on that, was work that was done. So the idea is, you put the time in, you mark it as billable if it's billable, you assign it to the customer and what was done, and you put the notes in, and then when it comes over into QBO, you do your invoicing. And not only that, you should be able to, but I messed up somehow, come over here, and when I run payroll for Victoria, then that time, we'll see if I run payroll. I don't think my time came over. So I thought that was me. That was, truly, it does come over. Trust me. On there. Right, her time didn't come over, but it would come over if we had it, if I had done something. I'm not sure what I did wrong on there, but approve. We already approved her. I'm in the wrong week as part of the problem. So we put in time like for tomorrow that wasn't, and it's not tomorrow yet, and it's not even the end of today. And you know what I'm going to do is I will go back, because I do want to show you that this really does work on there. So if I do my manual time card, and I switched the week, and I switched the user. Oops, switch user. To Victoria Kelly. And switch the user. Let's try somebody else on here. Oh, it's all locked right now because now we're in the past week and we've approved it. So let me switch the user again. Oops. We'll try Vicki King. Let's see. This, Project 13, 8 hours. Yes. Classes. Thanks for being patient with me, guys. I really do know what I'm talking about. It just goes to show on there. And we'll put in 8 hours for that day. It won't allow me to save it if I haven't filled in the required fields. And notice it just remembers, it kind of assumes you probably do the same thing. And I'll save that. And I'll close out of there. And then look at our approvals. And we'll look at last week. For Vicki King. And run the report. So now we've got 16 hours here. And we'll export all approved time. So what's going to happen is that one, we weren't set up to actually export it with somebody that was added. Remember when we said that we can set up employees in TSheets and we can't set it up in, but that won't sync to QuickBooks? That's what we would have. Because this is a demo file, you never know when things are happening. So let's go back to our customers and look at our unbilled activity. And that's what we had, right? Hey, look at this. Here's our time charge. And we can start our invoice. So we come in and we start an invoice. Here's the time. I can put in the rate. If the service item had a rate, then we put it in. Put it in at 150. Oops. I want to put the rate in at 150. Okay. I'm feeling better about this. I hope you guys are too. And then I could save it or save and send or save and close. So I can invoice for that time. And I'm not going to go into the paying the payroll because that person really has not been set up to run payroll on. But that same time would go on the paycheck there. And we have that invoice created. So I will tell you, so if we come back to our Quick Create in QBO and look at our weekly timesheets, and go back to last week, right? And our other Vicki King. See, there's our work here, and we could put in how much we're charging our customer per hour on there. And we can make any changes here. If we've already approved it in TSheets and exported it, we can make some changes there. I'm just going to close out of here. Okay, so we are almost done here. So let me just go back and see what else we have here on there. So using the TSheets info and QuickBooks Online, I mean, I already kind of showed you that. So we have here's our weekly timesheet so that you can put in the information. If there's, how much you want to bill per hour on that. If there's any changes you need to make, you would do that. And then here's just a screenshot that shows that billable time so that you can add it to an invoice on there. And then lastly, I want just to make you aware that as Pro Advisors, we get a free TSheets account. We also can get a URL so that if we want to recommend TSheets, then we can get 20% commission for the first paid year that our clients use it. And we also get a 10% discount for clients and escalated support, so pro support at tsheets.com. And TSheets also has a certification program, so if you want to become TSheets certified, you can go out to their website and look at information on that. And again, you get a free TSheets account for life. You get what we saw on the, just as a regular Pro Advisor, QuickBooks Pro Advisor, plus you get marketing collateral and fancy badges and things like that. Now we put in the slideshow some user guides there, so if you go to help.tsheets.com or go to that tsheets.com/payback, and then what number would you call and what support would you have. So I'm going to actually put up, because we are at the top of the hour, because I had to do that time like 3 times on there, I really apologize for that. So I am going to launch the CPE keyword poll, so you will see that, and if you can answer that, that would be great. Even if you don't need it for CPE, it would be good to fill it in, because then you get this little certificate there. And meanwhile, I'll kind of look at some questions, and I want to say thank you very much for attending this webinar. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I'm sorry that my demo was a little bit disjointed at the end there, but hopefully you got the idea, and it really is pretty easy to use there. Let's see, so somebody asked if you need to sync to get the information into QuickBooks. And yes, I mean, from TSheets, you always have to go to export approved time or import from QuickBooks on there. So any write-offs and things like that, that would be done in QuickBooks. So Angela asked about how accounting firms are adjusting timesheets exported for write-offs and rounding out hours. I mean, I think probably you would not mark them billable or figure out what you want to do on there. Can you pull the billable time for both days on the same invoice? And the answer is yes. I just showed you the one. But if I had gone from either my Quick Create at the top or from my Sales Center and said Create Invoice and clicked on that customer, the drawer would have opened up and I would have been able to pull in whatever time is listed there. Is this an online program that is populated online? So yeah, this is the apps that we're talking about, Yolanda, are based in the cloud on there. So it is an online program that you access either via your mobile device or through the web, and then we export it into either QBO or QuickBooks Desktop. Can the employees track time by client? Yes, we showed that, right? Remember, we picked what customer and job that they were working on. And so if you set it up that you want to put in the service item, you can do that, and the billable status and the class on there. Does the client have to be in QuickBooks to be able to use TSheets? So TSheets works with QBO and QuickBooks Desktop, but it does work with other applications and other payroll systems. So I would suggest that you go out to tsheets.com if it's something that, that if you're looking for something in particular. If you're using Zen Payroll, can you still link the time to invoices in QBO? Yeah, I believe so. And I think it also links with Zen Payroll. So again, you're not double entering that information. But again, I would check with TSheets just to make sure. So I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on there. And again, if there's a few more questions, I will try and answer them. But otherwise, I thank you for attending. I know that we're already over our time. I hope to see you at QuickBooks Connect 2015. I will be there, and hopefully you will be there. Rianne asks, if an employee works on 5 different clients during the day, does TSheets allow for that? Can you input notes for each client? And the answer is yes to both of those. So that's what happens with me and you, right? We work on clients all day long. And so you just switch to the new client, you write out new notes, what service item, whether it's billable, class tracking or not, if you have all those features turned on. Okay, folks. Thank you for staying till the bitter end on there. I will answer one more question. Mark asks, what's the advantage of using TSheets for an accountant over time tracking in QBOA? So when I am in QuickBooks Desktop, I am generally in my client files. I'm not in my own file. And even though I can have 2 companies open at one time in QBOA, oh, you're saying QBOA. QBOA? The QuickBooks Online accountant doesn't have a time tracker. So if you're talking about your free subscription of QuickBooks Online, then yes, you could track time in there. But again, you probably, even though you can use multiple Chrome users to open up multiple company files at the same time, I think it's just easier to me to use an app, and I might not want people in the QuickBooks file that I want to track time. So it puts the responsibility generally on who the actual time tracker is. Okay. Well, I am going to close out this webinar, and again, thank you everybody for attending. I hope you got a lot out of it, and maybe we'll see you at QuickBooks Connect 2015. Come find me because I'm always happy to meet new people. And, you know, if you're not signed up for the Pro Advisor program, sign up for it and give TSheets a try because we get it for free. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next webinar.